My first visit to India has been a source of great enthusiasm to me. After all, it is a country with which Brazil shares many similarities and complementarities, be they social, economic, or cultural. Cooperation in the area of ethanol production is certainly a topic of much interest to all, and I see a great opportunity for partnership between our two countries. Brazil has developed a wide and successful biofuels program which uses crops as raw materials for the generation of clean and renewable energy. Brazil and India have been growing sugarcane for centuries, and both countries recognize the major socio-economic importance of this crop. However, with regard to ethanol, there is a great disparity between us. While Brazil is the world's second biggest producer with over 30 billion liters per annum, India produced only 1.5 billion liters in 2018. Replacing fossil fuels and with clean energy such as ethanol has the potential to reduce pollution in large urban centers, as biofuel powered vehicles emit much less carbon dioxide than diesel or petrol engines. In addition, the use of ethanol will contribute to reducing India's need for oil imports, and together with policy reforms in the sugar sector will provide a solution to excess global sugar supply, providing greater price stability for this commodity and thus benefiting both countries. Another area of great interest to both of us is that of genetic improvement. Brazil and India own large zebu cattle herds, and we share an interest in exchanging genetic material to improve their quality. During this trip, our countries signed a joint statement under which the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation shall provide training to Indian researchers on in vitro fertilization techniques. In addition, our countries shall collaborate on the installation and operation of a center of excellence in dairy farming in India. With regard to bilateral trade, there is great potential for expansion in several sectors, and agriculture in particular. Our current trade agenda is highly concentrated. There is therefore much room to expand and diversify our exchanges in both directions. On this visit headed by the President of Brazil, we took the first step towards that goal by opening the Indian market for Brazilian sesame seeds and the Brazilian market for Indian corn seeds. However timid this step might seem, it ought to be considered the herald of a new age in which both countries are committed to working together for the expansion of their bilateral agenda. The Mercosur and India Preferential Trade Agreement has been in force since 2009. However, the agreement is rather limited, especially with regard to agriculture, where the coverage ratio is less than 10% of our bilateral trade. Brazil is willing to engage in efforts to substantially expand this agreement in order to further contribute to diversifying and increasing our trade. I therefore believe it is essential that our countries continue to work together in order to overcome the barriers that hinder the free movement of goods. As I said at the beginning, we have a lot in common, and our similarities and complementarities justify a much closer and deeper relationship. China is taking unprecedented precautions by locking down at least 13 cities and effectively restricting the movement of at least 41 million people to contain the new coronavirus outbreak. The epicenter is a live animal market in Wuhan, from where over 800 cases have now been reported, alongside a few from other countries. The regimented Chinese response this time is quite unlike the SARS contagion in 2003 that caused nearly 800 deaths in at least 17 countries. Having courted blame at that time for slow response and secrecy, and now with an economy more integrated with the world, China has rightly upped the stakes. India has also made preparations like thermal screening at airports. Our public health system must also gear up. In recent years, outbreaks of H1N1, dengue, chikungunya, etc. have kept health departments across the country busy. During the 2018 Nipah outbreak, Kerala faced challenges like mobilizing diagnostic facilities, planning treatment protocols, setting up isolation wards, procuring protective gear and vaccines, spreading awareness, and instituting community surveillance. Other states must also prepare for such contingencies. It bears underlining that zoonotic transmissions have been blamed for several recent viral outbreaks like SARS, Ebola, and Nipah. Virologists point to animals, some eaten as meat, carrying many more viruses waiting to invade humans. Besides, unhealthy practices like injecting excessive antibiotics or steroids and the climate emergency are rendering industrial livestock farming unsustainable. There is a way out: lab-grown and plant-based meats. Old ways of life are changing, so are the diseases, so we need new solutions. Ultra-processed foods that would once have been considered unnatural are commonplace today. In like vein, the day should not be far when eating meat from actual animals would be outmoded and meat substitutes would be the norm. The government has yet again announced an attempt to privatize Air India. This is a good idea. The government has no business running an airline. What is worse is that running a loss-making airline that is loaded with debt of around rupees 60,000 crore definitely falls in the category of a moral hazard. Can the state, in all conscionability, allow a private airline to go bust? The deal this time is sweeter, which is not surprising because there were no takers last time. In summary, the government will sell its entire stake, not just 76% like it planned to do last time. No one wants to be in a joint venture with the government in a business like aviation, and definitely not in Air India with all its unions. It is unfair to expect buyers to take on too much debt from the airline. Allowing sale and lease back opens up a financing option that most airlines use for capital. A lower net worth threshold will expand the universe of potential buyers. Sure, buyers may not want to buy part of the ground handling subsidiary, but what is on offer this time is all of a proper airline. Indian airlines that are bidding will not have to meet the net worth criterion. Foreign airlines can bid as long as their bids are in keeping with India's rules governing foreign investment in airlines, though that was the case the last time too. Will this get investors to bite? That depends on what the buyer is looking for and its ability to fund and manage a turnover. Air India, along with Air India Express, has 146 aircrafts, of which it owns 82, but its fleet is not contemporary. It has slots. Although it has given away many key routes to foreign airlines, it has a brand, but one that needs to be refurbished. It is also unclear whether the buyer will have the freedom to prune the number of employees. Although the airline now has only 15,000 employees, the sweeter deal signals the government's intent, but it now needs a buyer with the intent to close. India has just completed 70 years as a republic, the largest democracy in the history of humankind. To many Indians, it may seem odd, perhaps even disconcerting, that the nation continues to debate fundamental principles about the natures and structures of our government. However, to students of history, this is a familiar tussle. One of the most contentious of these is the issue of federalism. The crux of the debate is about the division of powers between the union government and the states. At different times, different factors have energized this debate. Currently, two developments have once again brought the issue to the forefront. One is the apparent resistance by some opposition-governed states to the Citizenship Amendment Act, and the other is a judicial challenge by one of them to the 2008 Act, creating the National Investigation Agency. In understanding federalism, it is instructive to look at historical parallels. This tussle between central authority and decentralization is relevant for democracies, especially large or diverse ones. It goes without saying that there is no such debate in authoritarian countries, where the outcome of any such tussle can only have one outcome, with central authority prevailing. As such, it is a good sign for Indian democracy that this is a matter of debate. Even in democracies, this debate is less relevant for smaller, more homogeneous nations, although there are those among them that have enough diversity for the issue to be germane. But it is really only in large, diverse democracies that this debate is the liveliest. The best example of it from another country is the United States, the second largest democracy. After its colonies declared independence from the British in 1776, it still took many years of war before they prevailed. But even after the US War of Independence ended in 1783, for several years the newly independent nation continued to be an unwieldy amalgamation of the original 13 colonies, such as New York and Virginia. With inadequate central authority, the US was ungovernable. That only changed in 1789 with the adoption of its constitution and the creation of a union government, with General Washington elected as president in 1792 and an independent judiciary. Ever since, from time to time, its apex court issues judgments that either limit or enhance federal authority. Many resistors of central authority in India often refer to the Constitution's description of our republic as a union of states. If that was all there was to it, India too would be ungovernable, as the US was 250 years ago. Fortunately, the drafters of our Constitution were cognizant of history especially Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who had in fact completed his higher education in the US.